Hey everyone, it's Kai from Cool Collectibles back again for another review. This time it's the Hot Toys MMS551 Princess Leia and Wicket set. Now I did recently get this from local store Pop Culture here in Australia. I decided to order from them because they have their usual 10% pre-order discount, plus I use the pennies reward system to get another $50 off the price. So overall there was no better price to get it this set. Sideshow with today's exchange rate would have been an absolute bitch to order, plus shipping as well. So Pop Culture definitely was the way to go for local Aussies, and overall it is a fantastic set, considering all the accessories and everything else that you get with this set. It's definitely the way to go for me. I think you can get them separately as separate Princess Leia or Wicket figures if you wanted to get them separate. Or you didn't, or you only wanted to get one of them. But with the collector's set, you do get these two extra helmets, and I'm not sure if these helmet drumstick things are separate as well. But at least these two helmets came exclusively with the set. But onto the packaging. Overall, not too bad. I do like the way the Hot Toys always does their cardboard inserts and the promo art there, and it does look very nice. And comparing the Wicket in hand to the one that was in the promo pics, some people have said that there are a few differences, particularly around the weathering of the fur and so on, or the matting of the fur, but the version that I've got looks pretty good, particularly around the darkening around the face. I think they've done a pretty good job, so I'll give you guys a closer look at that when I go through the figure. But on that particular aspect, I'm pretty happy with what they did in the final version. I'll get the packaging out the way and give you guys a closer look at all the accessories. And I guess don't worry about the headless nature of Leia there. She's the head sculpt's on the side. I was just getting rid of some of the plastic wrap that occurs, that they wrap around the neck and so on. I'm not even going to bother trying to take that plastic around her chest off. It's very similar to what they had around, I think, the Obi-Wan figure. I can't remember which figure. They had it over one of the other figures that I got this year or last year, and it was an absolute bitch to try to get off. So I'm not even going to bother, and I'm going to be using the poncho anyway, which pretty much hides that whole area anyway. So I'll get everything set up to go through the accessories. Hold on. Alright, it is a set that comes with quite a few accessories, as a set of this price range should. As I was saying before, the exclusive items for this set include this weather beaten up helmet. I'm not sure if they actually use the Stormtrooper helmet from the Return of the Jedi Stormtrooper. It doesn't look like it. It looks more like the helmet from A New Hope, or even if it's just a weathered version of the ones that came with the Luke and Han disguise versions. I'm not sure if you can really pick up all the details in there, but I love all the little bits of attention to detail that Hot Toys put. I don't think this is the version that is meant to be worn, which is really just an empty one with a neck peg, but these ones that are meant to be held or displayed really do have some nice detail, so that'll be nice to put next to the figures here. They also have the Death Star Trooper helmet, and they've teased this figure, oh god, for years now. I don't know if it was 2016, 2017, or wherever it was, one of the conventions where they had the Death Star Trooper and the nice sort of Death Star display base. What they're hanging out for and not releasing it, I've got no idea. The helmet here is nicely done, and again has a bit of weathering on it, all the scratches and dirt marks and so on. But I'm not sure if it's a likeness of one of the actors. I mean, there was a number of actors that played them, so I'm not sure if they're worried about a likeness issue or something like that. But the fact they haven't actually released a Death Star Trooper figure is really pissing me and a whole lot of Star Wars collectors off. But hopefully they announce that one day soon. The stands, Wicket comes with his usual stand, and you get the silver plaque there. Unfortunately, there's no sort of dirt or molded dirt base. It's just a photograph, and I think this one is just stuck on. Normally you can sort of swap these out and they're just sort of floating. That one is stuck on. It's got a bit of the Endor grass base. Would have been nice if they had worked out a way to make that a little bit more realistic, But I guess they do add these little fauna and foliage type pieces that you can add to the base. I'm not sure if which side they're meant to go on. I think this one's meant to go on the rear. It doesn't really fit around the front there. And then you've got Leia's base, which is essentially the same, except with the longer, what do they call this thing? The thing that you put the figure on, the crotch grabber. And I think this piece can go on the back like so, and then you've got another piece that goes on the front or something like that. You can work it out, display it how you see fit. And I think overall it'll probably look quite nice with the Endor Luke figure. The helmet, very similar to Luke's, a little bit smaller, and I'm glad they went with the fabric on top like they did with the Luke figure, which is a very nice touch. It's got some nice weathered and paint effects there. Now you can take this off and put it over the head sculpt, which I'm not even going to bother trying. They do have a warning in the instruction manual that leaving leaving this on for extended periods of time may affect the head sculpt and transfer paint and scratch, etc. I'm not even going to bother risking that at all. Just like the Luke figure, I'll have her standing like this, unhelmeted, and she'll just be holding the gun and the helmet. So I think that'll be the best approach for my collection anyway. But for those that got two versions or two figures, putting her in this and the Luke with this helmet sitting on the speeder bike and so on, it does look very, very nice. The drumsticks, I'm not sure again if these are part of the exclusive set along with the helmets, or if they do come with the single version. But they look pretty good overall. Painted, there's no more sort of material or anything like that. That would have been a nice extra touch. But I guess for a molded drumstick it looks pretty good. The Wicket Spear is pretty nice too. It would have been nice if for once Hot Toys does something in metal as opposed to plastic, but I guess with that sort of weathered, broken, rustic look, I guess plastic and painted like this is probably the best approach. Would have been nice if that was fabric or something like that, but overall it doesn't look too bad, and the wood looks realistic enough. There's no sort of real weight to it, but that's probably a good idea for little Wicket, just so that he can hold it fairly well in some of those poses. The cloak or the poncho looks very similar to Luke's, but I think it's coloured in a much greener colour, which I think is accurate to the movie. Luke's was almost like a brownish colour, where this one is much more green. And I don't think there might be a thin wire at the bottom here. Yes, there is. So you can sort of have that sort of flowing in the wind, much like the Luke one. Just be careful of the stitching around the neck here. I did notice on my Luke one that if you weren't careful, you might start separating out those pleats here. So just be careful there. But I'll probably be just putting her head through there and having that folded down the back, just like the Luke figure. I have heard that putting the belt through these slots and through the, I don't know, maybe it just goes through the front and then wraps around the back here. I have heard you need to be very careful of the belt itself. So I'll, once I get that all set up later in the review, I'll let you know if I've had any problems with it. Hopefully I don't. And I'll give you guys a look at how she looks in the poncho. But overall the material is pretty good. She comes with her little pistol, which isn't too much to write home about. It's mainly just black plastic with a bit of silver metallic wash on it. So overall it doesn't look too bad. The holster itself is pretty crap and looks far too new and sort of flat and plasticky. I've heard that some people have had their belt, the leather or the bit of pleather at the back here come off. So I'm going to have to be very careful with that, and I probably would avoid trying to insert the gun into the holster itself. So for mine, she'll be holding it regardless. Comes with her watch, I'm not sure if it's meant to be on her left arm or right arm, but I think the instructions and promo photos show that. And you pretty much just take off the fist or the hand and insert it over the wrist. So I'll do that a bit later. Hand sculpts pretty similar to what we've gotten with other Princess Leia figures. Nothing too much to write home about. There's a bit of paint shading and so on, but not too much on the paint details and so on. And there's her pistol holding hand that I'll swap over to. I do like the Wicket hands. You know, the technique that they've done for Chewbacca is pretty much what they've done for Wicket here, from what I can see. I love the little biscuit holding hand. I actually thought that was a separate piece, but it seems to be stuck on, so either people have broken that off to allow Leia to hold that, but for mine I'll keep it with Wicket, if at all. I'm still undecided if he's going to hold that and just hold the spear in one hand, but I'll see how I go trying to copy some of the blogger photos and so on. But overall, the fur looks really nice, nicely matted, and it's not so delicate that it sort of crumbles and falls apart in your hand. So really that technique that they've used for Chewbacca has really helped them out a lot with this Wicket. But that, I think, is pretty much it for all the accessories. And I'll get the figure set up now and run you through that. I'll start with Wicket. Alright, so here is Wicket, and I think they've done a fantastic job. The underlying body, the only issue I think I've got is the legs here are a little bit, they don't seem to have too much articulation, and the movement doesn't really hold. So you can spread him out a little bit, but the movement back and forth doesn't really hold on mine, so I'm not sure if that's just an issue. I'll check with some other collectors if their legs sort of hold going forward and so on. Mine just sort of flops back like that, so I'm not sure if that's an issue, but at least the arms hold pretty well. And then there's the double joint at the elbow, which is quite nice. The fur doesn't seem so fragile that it sort of clumps and falls off in your hands. You've got the hand rotation there on that peg. There is a knee joint as well, slightly, that I can sort of feel there. I'm not sure if that's even like a rubber thing under there, or if it's an exposed joint. It feels like there's a fat suit or something under there that's sort of restricting some of the movement. You sort of get a rotation in the legs, a bit of tilt, not too much tilt. The detailing on the feet there look pretty cute. So you can get some movement and at least some way of him looking like he's walking or something. But the legs do feel a little bit hindered in some of the movement. And I don't think, from what I can feel, that there's any sort of body movement. I do like the weathering and the dirt wash on the white fur there, if that's coming through. The way that they've sort of tailored the cowl thing here is quite nice. You can sort of clearly see his face, and his ears popping out through there. This side's probably popping out a little bit more, but there's not much I can really do about that. I don't think they're articulated ears, but you can sort of see some of his head movement there. I've seen some good poses where just getting some of the sort of iconic tilts that he had in his head, where he was sort of very inquisitive with Leia and so on. I'll try and replicate some of that on my display. The material here is quite nice and nicely weathered. I like that it's a little bit darker. I'm not sure how accurate that is to the movie, but it looks pretty good in hand to me, like that. I don't think it's going to be too hard to swap out the hands. Just be a little bit careful where you pull, I guess, to release it out of the joint. I'm just trying to grab one of the other hands. There must be a little peg in there somewhere, so I'll swap that out and take some photos if you want to catch up on the Facebook page on some of the latest photos. So I'll do that a little bit later. But overall, the fur and the body looks really, really good. So just be careful of this little fat suit that he's got going on underneath here, and just see how you can adjust the legs and so on. But other than that, I think they've done a fantastic job. Hopefully they take this sort of base body and announce a few other Ewok variants. It would be nice to get some of the other members of the tribe and so on. So hopefully they announce that soon. But now I'll give you guys a closer look at Princess Leia. Alright, so here is the Leia figure with the general outfit underneath. As I was saying before, I'm not going to bother taking this plastic off. I might just make sure I can tuck this top bit in. If I use one of these tools or something, just tuck that a bit further in. But once I get the cowl on, I think all of that will be covered anyway. But I guess it's a shame not to show off the outfit. I think they've tailored it really, really nicely. The material is nice and fine. The sort of stitching is pretty good too. Love the pouches there. The sort of general, I don't know if that's some sort of general insignia thing that a lot of the rebels sort of had. But overall, the stitching, the symmetry and so on, they've done a pretty good job. This belt here, this is all just sort of pleather type material. It is on a Velcro piece here, so you do need to just take that off if you want to put on the, what do they call it, the poncho. Not sure why that's, so there's more Velcro at the front there to keep it all in place, which I guess is a nice touch. And just be careful of that holster. So as I was saying before, I have heard some reports of this little leather piece here on the holster being very delicate, so I would be very careful in taking that out, if I can do it on camera without breaking anything, because essentially you need to take that out to put the belt on. I think you need to, well, I'm not actually sure if you need to take that piece out or these pouches, but there is a recommendation in the instruction books to take them off, so you can sort of slip this through. So I'll do that in a second while I do the poncho off camera a little bit later in the review. But on the base figure itself, I guess there were some complaints that they use these exposed joints, double jointed elbows there. Now, I guess it does look a little bit unsightly, but for most poses, like that iconic pose where she's holding her pistol and so on, you can sort of pose it in enough different ways to hide the joints, and overall I don't think it really takes too much away from the figure itself. The pants area, I would be very careful in not trying to get these boots or the pants out of the boots, because I can just imagine how difficult it would be to put these boots back in there and keep these pants in place. I had to try to do that with the Princess Leia Hoth figure, and getting the pants back in inside the boots was an absolute nightmare, so hopefully I'll never have to do that for these ones. The boots here are a very similar sort of pleather material to other figures like Obi-Wan the Jedi and Han Solo in the past. They seem to have sort of fixed the bending at the ankle area here, but she doesn't really seem to balance too well on her own on these boots, but you might be able to get some sort of minor articulation in the ankles there, so you can get a bit of tilt, but the material does really hinder that quite a bit, at least on my version. So just go easy on how you bend and pose up the ankles here. But other than that, the boots look pretty good. And articulation was, as I was showing before, the arms go out wide enough, and there is the body and a bit of the ab crunch and body rotation. So I think the top half of the body is, from what I can feel, pretty much the same as all the other Princess Leia figures. And the leg articulation, I guess you can get her into some of those poses. I think the pants are pretty tight, so I'm not sure how people are getting her onto the speeder bike, because just trying to get her feet, her legs up, it's starting to feel very tight here, so unless you can somehow loosen them with some of the Velcro here, I would find that pretty difficult to pose up in some of those more dynamic poses. But for the most part, for how I want her displayed in my collection next to Luke and Wicket, she'll be pretty much in a fairly static museum pose, but of course trying to replicate that iconic pose of hers with the pistol. The head sculpt, I probably haven't even gone through the head sculpt yet. This is another fantastic head sculpt by Hot Toys, particularly in the paint application. I think it's almost a slightly darker paint application than the Hoth version. I will get that out in a second for a side-by-side. The overall sculpt is, I think, very similar, if not identical, although the positioning of the eyes are different, and that might give the illusion of a slightly different sculpt. I think the only main difference with the sculpt, of course, is that this back headpiece comes off. I thought it was magnetic, but it's not. It's just a keyed plastic piece there. And of course you need to take that off to put her helmet on. And there's no way that I'm even going to attempt that. So sorry for being so worried about not damaging my head sculpt, but that's probably the priority for me anyway. And I prefer her displayed like that, regardless, in the collection. But again, as always, Hot Toys nails it with the stranding in the hair, the sculpting. I'm not sure how they do it, but it doesn't seem like any other 1/6 scale company can do this level of fine stranding in their hair sculpts. Most of it looks a lot thicker. And of course the facial paint application with all of its sort of realistic skin texture, that fine shading, and that little bit of freckling really does make it look very realistic. And I do love those glassiness in the eyes as well. Just be careful of these little delicate pieces on the sideburn areas there. There is a warning in the instructions that they are delicate. And putting those on and off with the helmet, I don't know if the helmet's going to push those, or you might risk ripping them off if you're putting the helmet on. So just be careful in that area. But that's pretty much it for the figure. I'm just going to spend a bit of time putting the poncho on and setting her up as I would for my display. And then I'll finish up the review with a bit of a comparison. So I'll be back in a sec. Alright, so here they are set up, and I have to say this set is absolutely fantastic. I love it. I love these original trilogy figures, and if they've done them and they keep doing them to this level of quality, I'll keep buying them for sure. The fur on Wicket here, I think, doesn't take too much to get looking pretty good. Unlike Chewbacca, I just had to sort of get this little tool that came with, I think it came with Chewbacca, and just used it to slightly go around the edge of the face and just fluffed up the fur, and fluffing up the fur to fill out and sort of extend past the edge of the cowl really makes a big difference in terms of the way he looks. I think the darkness around his eyes and his mouth are pretty spot on. I've seen some of the photos up on Sideshow Freaks that show, I think, what they call the first batch of these, where the fur might have been a lot darker. I don't know if this late batch from Pop Culture is slightly different, but I don't think it's as dark as the first batch, and it's not as light as the second batch that I saw on the Sideshow Freaks forum. So I don't know if they're just it's potluck, and it changes that based on who's in the factory that particular day on making the fur. But overall, I think with the version that I've got, it's not too dirty and not too bright. So I think I guess in terms of teddy bears, it's just right. With Princess Leia here, getting the cowl on was, the poncho on was a bit of a pain in the ass, with particularly getting this pouch and that holster over the belt. You need to take those off to be able to slip the belt through the buckle. And sorry, not this particular pouch, but this little one that comes with it. Getting these through the Velcro was very, very tight, and I tried to get it back on because it sort of sits behind her at the small of her back, and I couldn't even be bothered trying to put it back on because you can't even see it under the poncho anyway. So I'll just put this in the accessories box and leave it like that, but at least I was able to get the holster back on without snapping off that little pleather strip. And as I was saying before, I've got it posed up like that with the holding the helmet, and Wicket here. I did steal the little head tilt. The head tilt, I guess, is fairly iconic for the character and brings out a lot of his character. So I tried to get as much of the head tilt as I could without making it too obvious. And I do love him holding his little biscuit there. Swapping out the hands was a little bit tricky. I didn't want to dip these. Normally I dip the hands in hot water, but of course with the fur I didn't want to do that. So getting the hands back into the peg was a little bit difficult. But it is pretty cold here, so if you sort of get a hairdryer or something like that, that might work just as well. So I've just got him posed up like that, holding his spear in the biscuit. And I do love the fact that these helmets really sort of set off the diorama pieces as they're on display. So nothing too fancy, and my Luke is in the cabinet already. I didn't get out the Luke, but I'll take a few photos and post them up on the Facebook page just to show you what the overall cabinet looks like after I've got them in. But I did get the Hoth Leia out of the cabinet just for a quick comparison. I can't actually fit her on there, but you'll notice that because this hairpiece is not a separate piece, it actually sits a lot more flush than this version, where you can sort of see the gap quite a lot once you sort of catch your eye on it, and that's as far as I can push it in through that key. Now I guess with the Hoth version, you'll see that the hairpiece goes right up against the, if I can refocus, it goes right up against the ear. So I'll see if I can push it any further closer to the ear, but I don't think I'll be able to get that much more of a difference, to be honest. The eyes, I did a quick comparison against the eye line, and they are pretty straight on, so there's not too much difference in terms of eye line. The paint application, I wouldn't say that the new Endor version is that much better. I think the Hoth version here has a pretty awesome paint app in its own right, and the freckling and realism is just as nice. The lipstick is that nice burgundy red as well. So overall it's pretty much the same sculpt with a slightly darker paint application on the Endor, I think, in the skin tone, but that's pretty much it with the comparison. But that is pretty much it for the Leia and Wicket set. Hopefully you like that look at the set and how I've set it up. It'll look amazing in any Star Wars collection, so if you are an original trilogy fan, I definitely recommend getting a hold of this set. But hopefully you can give the video a like and subscribe. I've got the Mask of Zorro from Blitzway coming up next. That's taken about 3-4 weeks from the US and it's still not here. So hopefully it comes this week. It has arrived in the country. And then after that, hopefully Big Bad Toy Store get their Rambo from 3.0 as well, because I've got that pre-ordered. But hopefully you can stick around for all of that. And until then, thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers. Bye.